Oh, a finish from Leacher here to the box. Hotter, will he go for goal? Goes for goal. Here it is!
Might drop here, Ziggins! Off the line by Ring! And in!
Welcome to the Bees Analytica Podcast. Hello and welcome to episode 13. On this week's podcast, we'll discuss the controversial wage cap that they wish to apply to the Championship, have a roundup of this week's fixtures, and have a look at some of the transfers that have joined the Championship in this coming week. As usual, I'm joined by my two co-hosts, Alfie and James. How are we doing, gents?
Yeah, good, thank you.
Yeah, very good.
I bet you're buzzing after this week's performance from Reading. That obliterated Coventry with a comfortable 3-0 win in the end. Lucas Zhao seems to be grabbing them headlines again, doesn't he?
I mean, it was John Swift this week. Oh, player you know what a lot about. Oh,
Yeah,
what
one
a
that he
free
doesn't
kick.
like very much either.
I never had an issue with his qualities. It was his attitude at his time at Brentford, but he seems to have come on leaps and bounds since being at Reading. But no, Reading were mightily impressive again and proving a lot of people wrong by keeping themselves up there in that hunt. But
Yeah, unfortunately, you won as well. So.
yeah, another good performance by us, to be fair, against a very decent Luton side. They have come on really, really well from last year. And considering they got absolutely dropped 7-0 that first game we played them, they were abysmal. They were one of the worst Championship teams we've seen in a long time. But credit to them, Nathan Jones has turned that ship around and comfortably sat in mid-table right now. So hopefully good things to come from them.
No Tony, though.
No, Tony. First yellow card was stupid. He shouldn't have punted the ball away. But at the end of the day, 9 out of 10 footballers would have done the same thing. And then I don't know what happened with the second yellow. There's been no video incident, nothing to show what he was booked for. Apparently Lockyer hit out at him. But again, no video. I haven't seen anything, so I can't say if it was a fair red or not. Just strange. Really. I know you had a red card over at Reading. Was it a fair decision or...
Yeah, 2 yellows. It was just too late.
Too
I mean,
certain.
there was no need to, because the second booking, there he had 2 men on the cover anyway, and Ajari wasn't going anywhere. But he just clipped him and took him out. And he didn't complain or anything, and then as a result, Swift absolutely smashes in that free kick from 35 yards as well. So it's a bit of a double whammy.
Yeah, we have a feeling. What do you think on that? Because as a coach, I'm looking at that and thinking keeper could have potentially done better.
Yeah.
And his footwork was a bit off. He didn't move. He obviously stepped back across to that side, but then not dived that direction. It's just kind of got a bit flat-footed.
And any free kick that kind of goes in on the keeper's side, you always have to kind of question it. But because it was on the Arena channel, there aren't any other angles. It's there by the one camera, I think. So I want to see an angle from behind Swift to see just how much that ball moved, because from a side angle it dipped a bit, but it kind of looked quite straight. But it can't have done, because he'd have surely saved it if it literally went straight at him.
That would be your logic, but I don't know. Maybe something's in sight of the goalkeeper, just got caught in the wrong position.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair to Coventry, I thought first half they were really good, and I was actually, as you all know, I'm more negative than you guys are anyway. But I did think Coventry were fair dues for a point in the first half, and then I just think the second goal, 30 seconds after half time, just absolutely killed them, and then we just dominated the second half, and we could have created chances at will, but we kind of took the more measured approach, rested and rotated a few of our players, and 3 goals and 3 points.
Yeah,
You can't really argue.
Coventry are an odd one. They currently sit just 6 points above the relegation places. They've just been an odd, real mixed bag this year. Had some good wins. They beat Millwall last week before obviously facing Reading, who were in and about with them. Hammer has been incredible this year, or Hamer has been incredibly good this year.
Yeah.
But I just don't seem to have enough currently in them. They've got their 2 top goal scorers, funnily enough, are Hamer and Godden with 4 each. Are they a slippery slope down the table? Is that what we're looking at currently now with them and potentially being pulled into that bottom 3, especially with Derby starting to find their feet under Rooney?
Yeah, you look at, I think, I had a look at the table the other day. Any of the bottom 8, I think, are at risk of being in that relegation. Well, I mean, most of them are already, but I think Coventry are certainly slipping into relegation dogfight time.
It'd be interesting to know when the last time all 3 promoted teams were just to get relegated. That'd be an interesting one to find out, and I'll get back to you on that one. Because if they are, all 3 of them are in real danger of slipping straight back down.
Oh yeah.
But I think it would probably be a first, wouldn't it? In our lifetimes, at least.
I mean, this is the first year, though, really, where no team from League One's come up, and no one's really surprised that they're struggling. There are 3 teams that came up. None of them particularly set the world alight in League One for the matches that they played. They were just kind of grinding results out. There's no like Sheffield United a couple of years ago that came up and people that kind of expected more than just survival off of them. This year, all 3 were more or less expected to be down in that bottom 4 or 5.
Do you think it's because of COVID, though, wrecked the schedule? We didn't have a full season to evaluate these teams of.
Yeah, maybe they didn't get the opportunity to showcase just exactly what they could do, because obviously they really only played, just over half?
I think it was 35 in the end, before.
So, maybe they had more explosive in them, but I mean, all 3 are just workmanlike teams that managed to get up on sheer, determination and a good team ethic. It was none of them are teams of individual stars.
That's harsh on Rotherham and Coventry, to be fair. Wickham obviously have a lot built around their culture and stuff, but again, that comes down to more quality and finances and being able to bring in people. But Rotherham have been in this division before. I think Coventry are a nice addition. Both teams.
Yeah, and
the
standout stars that were for Rotherham when they were last in the Championship have all left. Other than so Hickway was now kind of the big man, and he's a defender. They've got a couple of good League One journeyman striker like Freddie Ladapo. And then you've got Coventry, who brought in Hamer, who's now their best player in the squad. Callum O'Hare was one of their standouts last year, and he looked out of his depth and probably should have put Coventry at least one up over the week. I mean, Coventry, I still think they'll have enough to stay up, but they didn't set the world alight coming up from League One, which ultimately you don't have to do. You don't have to come up with the most stylish team. You just got to get up there. But I wouldn't be surprised if any of them did go down this year.
But there is that war. I was going to bring it on the topic of relegation. You look at someone like Cardiff now, who also seem to have turned it around under Harris, but then have now gone on to lose 5 in a row and seem to be in freefall currently. They spent a lot, and we'll come on to that with wages in a bit. They spent a lot of money thinking they can push up the table, and they just seem to be freefall at the moment. I mentioned it in the mid-season preview about the expected numbers were massively underperforming. But at what point do you just say that it's gone stale and change is potentially needed? Like in this run, they've lost to teams like Wickham. They lost to Brentford, obviously, with 3 really good quality goals. Norwich, another one up there, but QPR, who were just below them, catching them up. At what point, if you're Cardiff, do you start to seriously worry that the top 6 is no longer in sight and you need to consolidate?
Well, they got to the playoffs last year, and there's very much a kind of a hark back to when Reading last got to the playoffs and then ended up finishing 20th the year after. Sometimes it just doesn't quite work the next year, and the expectations have risen, because I don't think Cardiff are particularly expected to get into the top 6 at the last season.
Considering the money they spent, though, in the summer, you look at Harry Wilson coming in on big contracts. They've had to clear quite a few of the dates.
Wilson was a big, sign of them trying to move forward. But I mean, they just relied so much on Kiefer Moore this season that when you've only really got one out-and-out scorer, it's always going to be to push up there. And Wilson's not. Let's face it, he's not been as good as people expected him to be. He's not the Wilson that was at Derby a couple of years ago in terms of his output, but he's not got as good a squad around him. I think that they got more than enough to be in the top half coming into the season if they can turn this around soon. But maybe you just got to hold your hands up and say that it's just not working out this year, and you've just got to finish as high as you possibly can.
That's the interesting question. I'll bring it to you, Alf. Who is actually available? We've spoken about the manager merry-go-round before. Like, you get rid of Harris. Who do you bring in? Who comes in to actually replace him?
Who comes into the Cardiff team and makes them a better side? I don't think there is anyone currently. I really don't. I can't think of. Do you know what I mean? Normally, there's a manager out there that you think, yeah, you could come in and improve, but not this time.
Looking at the style of the squad, maybe Paul Cook. Would he bring it? I don't know. Would he be able to bring it on any further? He's not really a top 6 manager, but he's not been given the opportunity with a team that's pushing for top 6.
He did really well with Wigan.
Yeah, I think he's meant to be favourite to go to Sheffield Wednesday, which
I did see that. Yeah.
I think it'd be a good fit, to be fair, down there. But with Neil Harris, they went very stylistically similar to Neil Warnock because they had a squad built to play the style of football that he wanted to play. So I think you'd have to stick with someone quite stylistically similar to Harris and Warnock and hope that maybe it's a motivational thing and this new manager can come in and just do the right things off the field to get them playing better on the field.
Yeah, but we'll continue on the vein of Cardiff because we'll go into some of the transfers this week that have come through. I've loved their business, to be fair, Cardiff. I know they're struggling so far, but Max Waters coming in from Crawley, Perry, NG. I'm going to say that.
NG, I think.
Yeah.
He's pretty solid.
But 2 players that have cost them £1.5 million. That is some cracking business, to be fair, from their recruitment team. Like Perry NG has been a standout player now for the last 2-3 seasons at League 2 and League 1 level. I'm surprised how long Crew have been able to keep hold of him. And only to get, I think it's 350k was the reported fee, plus bonuses for promotion and yada. But I am genuinely surprised that he has taken this long to step up, and I think Cardiff there have got themselves an incredibly good fullback for the price that they paid for him.
He's one I look at to hope Reading might sign potentially if at right back if we don't, because Yiadom, as much as he is the first choice, if we're not going to get 30 odd games out of him, then maybe value for money wise it might be worth looking somewhere else. As much as he's a good right back and probably one of my favourite players in the squad, but I think it's about time he got championship level and he's at a club now where he can push on and develop his career.
That's why I think with the whole manager stuff, if they were to theoretically sack him, is there a squad here that necessarily could be set up to play in a decent side? Like, NG is no mug. Waters at Crawley is used to playing in a good system. Wilson has played at all levels, especially in Derby, who's played well. Kiefer Moore at Barnsley. There's players there that have played in good systems before. Maybe if they're looking at this and rip up that book now, you've done with the Warnock-Harris era, and move into that new expansive football that every team goes to play.
Which manager is going to take you that direction?
Well, there's plenty in the lower leagues. I think Plymouth, Ryan Lowe has been excellent this year. Michael Dunn at Cheltenham has been really good. I think at Newport, Flynn and the staff there have done a really good job getting them to play football in difficult circumstances this year. Like, there is plenty of quality in this division, or in the divisions below, that have set templates.
I agree. But do you think a manager will move to a Cardiff job where potentially, if it doesn't go right, he's out in the summer?
I think if you're a lower league manager and Cardiff come knocking, they're probably, if not one of the biggest clubs in that league, probably one of the richer clubs in the league. You don't say no. It furthers your career, even if you're gone in 10 months. 6 months, you're going back down to League 1 potentially, especially if coming up from League 2. So
if you're looking at Danny Cowley did that with Lincoln, and he's not had a look in at a job since.
He
was one of the highest rated.
Mention him.
He was one of the highest rated managers at the time. He had Lincoln about 6 points clear at the top of the league left. It's not always sunshine and rainbows. And he didn't even do anything wrong at Huddersfield. They just found him directly. And he's not had a look in since. So it's not just as simple as jumping across, and even if it goes badly, you're going to get another job because a reputation can stick. Plus, I don't think Cardiff would sack a manager and then look down to League 1 or League 2 with the hope of getting playoffs. I don't think that's how the hierarchy at a club like that would work, particularly. Maybe if you're looking at a long-term plan, and maybe if you're thinking can take you. Maybe if you just bring someone in just to change the style, and then someone comes in to finish off the job and turn them into a promotion challenging side. But I don't think a Ryan Lowe or a Michael Flynn comes in and gets a Cardiff team into the top 6. But then again, they haven't been given the opportunity. So maybe if they're given the chance, that's the gamble you've got to take, I guess.
That was my whole point, though, is that's when if they're looking to change direction because they feel the top 6 is gone. Is out of reach now. That's where I was meant to take a punt and bring someone in from the lower divisions to then change it up. I'd like
to see a manager from one of those leagues given the job and actually given time to work the job. Cowley didn't get long enough. Ryan Lowe's done wonders at Bury and Plymouth. If he was to take the job, I think I'd like to see him get at least 2 or 3 years to set his stall out and actually do what he's, be given the opportunity to do what he was brought in to do, rather than given 6 months, see it's not gone very well, and then sack him.
Yeah, Brentford have done it already successfully with Smith, and now look, from flying high with Villa, and they've been incredibly good. this year, and he's built an incredibly good squad there. From Walsall to Brentford to Villa, they have all played very good football all the way through, and it's great to see the development path. I think we need more of that, especially coaches coming through the pathway.
What's the relationship like in Wales, Jake, between the two clubs? What would it be an easy jump, do you think, from a Newport to a Cardiff? Is there a strong relationship between the two clubs?
I think the thing is, Newport haven't played in the League One or the Championship for a long time now. Obviously, there's always that rivalry, and it was saw in the EFL Cup this season where Newport played Swansea and beat them comfortably, to be fair to them, and played really well. So, I don't know. I think Wales itself, I don't think there would be much issue between the two clubs. I think most people would look at it.
Fans would sit there and think it'd be a good opportunity for a young Welsh manager to get the job at arguably.
Yeah, I think to see that development, I think most people would look at that, especially if you're in Newport's camp, and it's a step up. It's a next step, and you would just wish best. Walsall fans might have not looked at it the same way with Smith and the way it went with him, but again, you can now admire that he's now in the Premier League with Villa, and potentially if an England job was to come up, would probably be one of the names on the shortlist for it. So, yeah, I think especially as a lower league club, there's nothing better than seeing your player develop and go through, or coach even. I think it's the same situation, and that whole loyalty situation is not. It's not loyalty, but you know what I mean. That attachment to a coach. I don't think it would be like a Luis Figo moving from Barcelona to Madrid, if that's the point we're trying to make.
Because I'm kind of seeing that, obviously the links with Omar Richards going to Bayern Munich. You'd think that a lot of the fan base in Reading, I don't know if Alfie has seen this as well, but you'd think it'd be anger at losing one of your best players. But what I've seen is a lot of fans just sitting there and thinking, wow, someone from our academy is going to be playing for one of the biggest clubs in the world.
Yeah,
a lot more kind of hands up and thinking, well, what can we really do if a club like this comes knocking? But it's nice to see fans not hold a grudge over a player wanting to progress.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, the Omar Richards to Bayern Munich. You just want to see one of your players do well. I always think it when I watch Everton and it used to be Tottenham in the Prem with Gylfi Sigurdsson or Shane Long at Southampton. It's always nice to see your ex-players go on and perform well. The only thing, and I don't think it's Richards' fault, is that we don't get a fee for him. But I think that's more due to the management of contracts rather than the player himself.
Yeah, I've seen that. I don't think Richards is getting any of the blame thrown.
Yeah, I don't think you can blame Richards for the situation that his contract is in.
No, you know what, gents? We'll park this conversation here, and we'll do it next week on the podcast. We've got a few more things to cover, but we'll discuss the academy system, what you think it's worth, what's the point in it, and we'll see if we can get someone on to have a chat about academy systems, especially because they're an interesting one. Obviously, I'll have my view as a Brentford fan without one. Huddersfield fans will have a similar sort of view to me, but we'll park that there and we'll bring it up next week because Richards is an interesting case, especially if this buy-in transfer does go through.
Mm.
If, as we always talk about, is money makes the world go round currently. So I'll leave this one to you, James, to introduce the controversial wage cap that has been proposed and basically give us some synopsis of it. Tell us what it's about, what's the plan, who's opposing it, usual stuff.
Yeah, so there's been obviously a lot of frustration around the current financial fair play restrictions in the Championship at the minute. And one of the ways I think that they're trying to go around it is by introducing a wage cap, which I understand they've already done in Leagues 1 and League 2 the last couple of years. So the league have suggested an 18 million per season salary cap in the Championship. And obviously with any EFL rule, it would need at least 2/3 backing to go through. But with the latest report, and I read a report in the Mail, nearly half the Championship clubs have already opposed the plans. And it's mainly stemmed down to the three of Brentford, Bournemouth and Norwich that have put together an 8-page document that have basically just slated the proposals. And I think I saw a stat where someone's already found 50 loopholes to the suggested plans before the plans have even come to fruition. It's not sounding the most effective way of changing the financial landscape in the Championship. And the main argument, I think, is that all it's going to do is make that gap between the Premier League and the Championship even bigger than it already is. I mean, it's probably good because it makes it a more competitive league in the league, but those teams that are then having to leave the league to go up to the Premier League, I think might end up struggling.
See, interesting. You talk about that. I'm thinking more of the impact that it'll have on League One teams coming up to the Championship. When you go from a 2.5 million squad wage and you can suddenly go to 18, you're not going to suddenly gain £12 million of players' wages in a summer unless you have an owner that has a wealthy pocket. That just won't be sustainable.
Is it
Well,
2.5 million for the season, or is it 2.5 million? Is it 2.5 million a year? That it for League One?
I thought that's what you just said, wasn't it?
I believe so. I will double check our information there.
Yeah, I think that's what you just said. But when you look at that gap, I know that everyone's going to talk about the gap to the Premier League and the Championship, but the Premier League don't care. They really don't care. But yeah, when we think about it now, 3 teams from the Championship that look like being relegated are the 3 teams that have come up from League One. That gap's only going to increase as this wage gap keeps going and keeps going.
You're 100% right as well. It's £2.5 million per season or per year.
It would make League One and League Two clubs attractive to buy, though, if they know that if you can get them up, you've then got another 17 odd million to spend.
How do you compete?
But that's not sustainable, James. And the whole idea of these,
keep them up.
Yeah, but if you go back down and then you suddenly have £15 million worth of wages when you're only allowed 2.5.
Yeah, but I think aren't you given, like, I think the teams that come down are given a grace period. I
don't know how long that grace period lasts, and I don't think you're going to get £12 million worth of players out. Say if it's a season, I don't think that's going to.
They just hold on to the players in the view that they get promoted again.
And
why get rid of them? We've got a grace period. Don't worry, we've got a year to get rid and re-regulate our books. Oh, hang on, We've been promoted again.
There's your issue.
Then you're down again. And then you're up again. And then you're down.
And they go, oh no, sorry, give us a year. We'll sort it out this time. We promise. Oh, well, we've been promoted again. So issue's gone.
Yeah. I don't think it'll work.
Sustainable at all.
No, it won't work in the Championship, and I don't think it's even going to get off the ground. Looking at the clubs that are opposing it, but you can see the 3 main clubs that are opposing it. I mean, almost half the league. I said there's 10 clubs are thought to have shared the view, but the main 3 being Brentford, Bournemouth, and Norwich, all of which are up there, and they're not looking at the teams that are going down to League One. They're looking at their own interest in going up to the Premier League.
100%. And I look at that with. So we had someone crunch the numbers. That I can't verify the source of this, the official figures. These are just what they've put together for the information we have. But you look at, it's only Norwich and Bournemouth. You said with the 2 that oppose it are over by 10 million and nearly 20 million by 1. Brentford are under it. So it's not even for financial reasons. If they're under the current wage that Brentford are opposing it, there must be something else. Was there anything in the reports that stated why they disagreed so passionately about it?
Well, yeah, the main way they introduce it is could end the Championship as a competition, in quotes, and make the league impotent was another one. One financial director has said there's already 30 ways to cheat the rules.
Yes.
So what's the point in bringing in rules if you can cheat them?
Yeah, well, I mean, they've already had them issues, haven't they, with the stadium sale fiasco?
I mean, I'm not sure if they're particularly against a salary cap per se, or whether they're against the 18 million part. But I mean, I don't think any big club is particularly going to want to make their job harder.
No, and I think the thing is as well is clubs are in different positions. You can't introduce a rule that suits one and all. If you think of a club like Notts Forest, the attendance that they get compared to the attendance that Wickham get, that's a massive jump in revenue from match day sales that Forest have over Wickham. Why penalise Forest for having fans in their ground and making money and then not allowing them to send it?
Are you proposing then a cap? Oh, sorry, James, go ahead.
Oh, I'm just saying we've got that in League One, where Sunderland with 45,000-50,000 is with Accrington Stanley. You hold about 1,200.
Oh yeah, exactly.
So we're proposing a finance system where it's relative to what you bring in, which currently FFP does. Are we saying?
Yeah.
Just
I think FFP is a good idea. It's just the way it's been implemented, and the ways round it that clubs have found that's been the issue. I think the whole concept of FFP is quite a good idea.
Well, there's got
but
to be
not
some
the way
way
it's
of
introduced.
There's got to be some way of stopping clubs or trying to prevent clubs from going to the wall. It's frustrating right now as a Reading fan, but mainly it's because we're constantly breaking it. But the frustration is more so with the owners than the rules themselves, because the rules have been set out for a reason. If you choose to break them, then I don't think that's particularly the rules' fault. Then that's the people that are running the club.
No, but it's the loophole. I don't think it's it. If you're a take the Reading owner, Dai Young. If you're Dai Young and one of your pals comes up to you and says you can put an extra 20 million into the club by doing this, it bends the rules, but you don't break them, you won't get fined. You're going to do it because you want to get the club up to the Premier League.
100%. Bournemouth have already pulled that stunt, haven't they? Where they literally piled money into it, went up, and then got a slap on the wrist when they came back down.
Yeah, well, think about Wolves as well. Wolves did exactly the same.
And QPR. And they had a massive fine, and they're suffering for it ever since. So they can't really bring in their players to.
I don't know if you guys saw the report. They were apparently asking for more leniency from members of the EFL in order to accommodate paying for the fine, because they were struggling due to the COVID pandemic, which I assume most teams are. But yeah, it's a mess. I was done a bit of the number crunching, as I mentioned, and there's a great fact that popped out is Watford's wages per week total the bottom 7 in wages, which would be Wickham, your Luton, your Barnsley, your Coventry's. That combined just manages to equal to Watford's nearly, which is $750,000 a week. Like, their highest paid players are currently on alleged fees of 63,000, 63,000, 55, 45, 45, 40. And that's just the top 6 earners. Now you compare that to someone like Barnsley, 10,000, 8,000, 7.5, 7.5, 6.5. That's their top 6. How do you then try and regulate this? I don't understand that with the wage cap. And in principle, I can see we need to protect clubs that don't end up going like berries, who spend fortunes to try and get promoted and then ultimately end up liquidating themselves. But how do you regulate between Watford and Barnsley, whose difference in wages is nearly 10 million a year?
And this is what we love about football, is that, especially in the Championship, is that mishmash of the league, of people coming down from the giant, it's the Premier League, and people going up from what is League One. I mean, it's why we love it on the field, and David versus Goliath, and it is off the field as well. But it does make it increasingly difficult to try and have a one rule suits all when the clubs are totally different sizes and shapes.
I'll bring this to you, Alfie, as our resident finance expert. What do you think football needs to do in order to sort this money problem out in the EFL specifically? The Premier League's its own entity. We'll leave that there. It's a whole different conversation. With your finance head on, how would you look at trying to fix the disparity?
I think it's tough. I think, unfortunately, team owners want to get to the lofty heights and the riches of the Premier League. And so we'll go about spending as much as they can, creating the best squad they can. So I don't... it's hard, because if you look at a team like Brentford, that's ideally what a League One club wants to do. Come up to the Championship, establish yourself, then build towards promotion. And they've done it a sustainable way. They haven't gone out of and spent over their means and spent what they can't cover if it doesn't happen, as you can see by them challenging for 3 or 4 years constantly now. So I do believe financial fair play has a way in this game, in the world of finance at the moment, but I do think it needs to be adjusted. I think when it was created, there were already issues, and I don't think they fully understood what impact these issues would have until you see now with clubs breaking them and clubs going bust. And and also I think half of it boils down to the owners. The owners' checks need to be done more thoroughly. They need to be verified by a panel, or something needs to happen with that. Because you get good owners, then I don't think we have some of these issues like has happened at Bury or what's currently happening at Derby with Mel Morris. Mel Morris is refusing to pay wages because he's selling the club. Well, how? That's like saying I own my house and I'm planning on selling it. I don't have to pay for electricity or water.
Yeah,
It's ridiculous.
the
Um,
issue.
Jacob,
Oh,
Can I
go on.
just? We've got some breaking news 3 minutes ago that Neil Harris has left his post at Cardiff with
There
the
we
media.
go. All right, we'll see where that goes then, boys.
So,
Mid special.
Yeah,
Next
they're on
week.
the lookout for-
What's up, boys? We've read the future.
Sorry about that, Alf, to cut you
No.
off.
No.
Big breaking news.
I think I like the idea with the fit and proper test for the owners, but then do you end up in a system where you have your Benhams, your Bristol City bloke, who between them have piled in £300 million of their own money into the club? Like, that's a shit ton. To put it into perspective, obviously Brentford got a new stadium out of it. Bristol, I know they've redeveloped the entire Rushden Gate. But if that one person, for instance, just has enough, walks away, they don't care about the club anymore, or tragically die. What do they do? What does a club like Brentford do, who has relied so heavily on Benham's investment? I know you talk about the good eggs, we've done it right, but that's a distinct possibility for a future. Of once the money runs out, or they're bored, or they don't want to anymore, or they tragically pass, or something happens. Are they so now reliant on these owners to dig them out of a hole? How do they get themselves out? Because they're not sustainable.
That's why you need the owners check.
And that's what I mean. Because we have these good eggs, you have these owner checks. It's brilliant. Benham passed with flying colours. He's had great companies throughout. I think is it Lane at Bristol City, James?
Lansdowne, Steve Lansdowne.
Lansdowne. There you go. He's been brilliant. He's done great things. But that question is, what if they walk? That is nearly £300 million between two owners of two championship clubs that they've invested. Obviously, this is all hypothetical. Obviously, I'm not saying Benham's just going to get up and leave.
Oh, yeah,
because why
yeah.
would he? Put 150
Yeah.
million in, you're not just going to leave. It's not a pet project by that point.
No.
But there's serious questions in asking like that. Because the other end of the scale is like, what happens if you end up like Wigan situation? If the conspiracies were true and the owner only came into it, put it into administration in order to win a bet.
Oh, exactly. In order
You know,
to win a
there's two ends to this scale.
how he has passed that owner's check. Oh, it still frustrates me to this day.
Do we think we need to regulate then what owners can put in terms of development across the board? Because I know they're currently restricted in what they can invest in playing squad, but in infrastructure as well.
Personally, I think there needs to be an independent panel that gets appointed to approve these plans of clubs.
Okay, no, I like
Make
that.
sure they're sustainable and independent, obviously, so that you don't have a Brentford fan on the board that opposes development from Norwich, kind of thing. You know what I mean. You need
Well, finance people that understand how it works and
Yeah.
is it sustainable for the
And
club to do it?
exactly. I think there needs to be something like that. But then again, who's going to want to pay for that?
And if it's only going to cost you a certain amount of money, surely clubs just put the money into finding the loophole around it.
Yeah.
It's such money makes the world go round in weird and wonderful ways, but
What's the phrase? Money talks, I believe.
yeah.
Money talks.
And while we, discuss all these bad eggs and these horrible owners, we've got to remember we're not going to lose that romantic within you that wants to go, wants to do a city, and you want to get taken over, and you want this man or this, group of people to build this whole, concept around you. I mean, look at City before the takeover; they were yo-yoing between the Championship and the Premier League. A lovely guy who's obviously got the club at heart, as well as making a lot of money, which he has now transformed them into one of the biggest superpowers in the country, in the world. And you've always, when you look at Dave Whelan, who took over Wigan when they were in non-league and took them up to the Premier League within like 5 or 6 years of getting into the Football League, winning the FA Cup. You want these. You don't want to shut off the opportunity for people to buy the club that could be good for the club.
There's issues. There's always the issues, and you need to be careful of what happens. Of clubs getting dug into a hole because your Whelans walk away. Your John Majewski falls into that category, walks away from the club. Brendan been in turmoil financially off the pitch now for years. Majewski put all that work in.
Interest.
Obviously, and I get that there's all good intentions and stuff, but like I mentioned with the Benham and the Bristol blokes, that they walk away. They are perceived good men of football. currently and have done it the right way, but they walk away. Swansea have suffered that as well. They did all that hard work, going all the way through the divisions. They've sold themselves, and they've had to now dig themselves out a hole they're in currently, sat in the Championship. It's just such a difficult one to discuss and regulate, because as clubs get smarter and the stakes get higher, they just find ways around it. That whole stadium fiasco with FFP was ridiculous and morally completely wrong, but legally, that did nothing. If you're in the case of Sheffield Wednesday, Derby, Reading, and all the others that did it, technically they did nothing wrong to the letter of the law. Well, ish. But, it's just, I think FFP needs looking at. But then, how do you look at it?
Ultimately, you're always going to upset someone. And obviously everyone has their own intentions at heart. And it's difficult to get enough votes to pass anything because everyone's covering their own backsides and making sure that the rules suit them best, not the league as a whole. Everyone wants to ensure that they're, I guess rightly so, that their interests are top of the pile, which is why it's still going to be so difficult to pass anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we didn't cover it quite near enough, though, but we'll talk about it now a bit, is the gap between League One, or League Two to League One, up to then the Championship, and then up to the Premier League. If we continue to regulate spend, where do we see this taking the game going, especially for the EFL and the 72 that are currently within it? What's our general thoughts on that and how it would end up playing out?
You're looking at a closed shop eventually, I guess. If clubs aren't able to invest enough to survive in the next division, you're just going to be looking at the same clubs in the same leagues, or at least the same clubs in the same league every other year, if not, when they go up and go down.
Yeah.
But it's just going to be a struggle if you're not giving the teams the chance to kind of strive. Because the whole point of what makes English football so great is that you can have teams go from the fourth division to the top. You have Wimbledon's and your other examples that have gone up and up and up. Even Brentford have gone up and up for the last 5 or 6, 7, 8, 9
years.
That's what you want to see, and it's what makes English football so great. So whatever you do, you don't want to lose that by not giving teams a chance to at least, build on themselves. You don't want clubs to be what they have to be. You don't want a club just because Rochdale are in League One now doesn't mean they have to be in League One forever. You want to give them enough opportunity that if they get the right owner and they do it the right way, that they can progress themselves and become more than what they are. Otherwise, both of our teams will be stuck down in League One and League Two forever. Which, as much as we'd have done it because we love our clubs, it's not going to be the most exciting thing playing the same teams every other year. You've got to give teams a chance to progress.
Yeah. I think I fall with the same boat as James currently, of if you stifle people's ability to grow and go through leagues, we've lost the game. Unless you've got and are fortunate enough to have the 92 back you, where do you see yourself going? You can't climb through the divisions or leagues without serious backing. And then who's going to want to put a project into a League 2 team when you can probably buy a back-end Championship team and do what Wolves did? You can either buy a Premier League team on the cheap if they're struggling. And I think we just end up seeing that divide between the lower divisions grow. And I'm surprised massively, especially with COVID, that we haven't seen more clubs struggle. I know we've had Derby and Wigan as high-profile cases in recent weeks, but I'm surprised we haven't seen more. And by now stifling people's earnings, I think we're just going to see that gap widen if these proposed plans do get approved. We'll let you close up, Alf, on your thoughts on this, because I want to bring one last perspective in before we do finish today's pod.
Go for it.
What's your view on the matter? And we'll go from your finance view now. Put your cap on and have a think.
Oh, it's my finance point of view. You reject all of it. Why would you want to be told you can only spend 18 if you suddenly have the ability to then be able to spend 22, and then you gain an advantage on everyone else because you're able to spend more money? There's no chance teams are going to accept this. The only teams that will accept this are your teams like Wigan or Huddersfield that have quite a small budget already. And that's why you're seeing about 2/3 of the EFL rejecting it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know what it is. Let me find the document. But What is it?
As James mentioned, there was 13 teams proposed or disagreed with it, with the front
13
runners.
teams disagreed with it. And you look at teams like Swansea and Brentford, they're both in about the £6 million per year. Well, if they suddenly find an owner that wants to put a bit of money in them, they can only invest 2 million of wages into the first team. You can't.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're looking at Brentford and Swansea is trying to compete with Norwich and Bournemouth to go up. I mean, Bournemouth are spending close to 40 million a year. That's double what Swansea and Brentford are spending. So, there's always room to grow. And if it's done sustainably, then I think that's where you have to be sensible as a club. You can't overspend your means. You can't. And I think that's where it's up to owners and financial controllers to regulate it.
Well, I'm going to bring in one last viewpoint on this then. And the ones we haven't discussed yet, the players. How would you name one other industry where you're told that your pay is regulated to a certain cap and you can only be paid within that cap?
Yeah.
When considering players typically will have a 15-year career, right? They don't work like the rest of us, they don't. And again, that's another argument for another day of why should they be paid that much. But if you have that 15-year period to earn money in, we've not looked at it from that viewpoint. As a player, you're going to a club that's only got 2.5 million a year left on that salary. That's only about 20, 30k, isn't it? If I've done my maths right.
Yeah.
Why should a player be limited on their income? Like, what? There's no other industry in the world that does that goes, right, there's a salary cap on us, you're only earning that amount. Because that's what our budgets propose.
Do you reckon we might see more move abroad like we're seeing now, if that comes into place? If clubs in other countries are allowed to offer more?
Why would anyone want to come to the Championship if you could go to Ligue 1 where there's no salary cap or, and you can earn an extra $5,000? Yeah, okay, it might not be a more exciting league, it might not be a more exciting team, but why would anyone? Why would a foreign player want to come to the English Championship or League 1 or League 2 if they're being told, sorry, buddy, you can't earn more than this amount? No one would come.
It might become more of a stepping stone because then Premier League clubs know they can get players on cheaper wages. Because if you're in the Championship earning 20 grand, you can't then go and demand 50 odd grand off a Premier League club. You'll get a slight raise on what you've got in this league, and then
it's like, I don't know if you've seen the rumours, but Josh King's asking for 120 grand. There's no way he can demand that. If his wage gets regulated at, I don't know, let's call it 30 if he's a top earner or whatever. But there's no way that a Premier League that he'll be able to demand that off a Premier League club. They'll say, we'll give you 35, take it or leave it.
There's no way that he can demand that now. This is Josh King we're talking about. Bournemouth.
Well,
20 grand.
Yeah, that's a different story. But
the cap.
I'm with you, but I've been very pro players. You know me. I speak a lot about my viewpoint on players and of earnings and. At the end of the managers, to be fair, that loyalty in football doesn't exist purely because of the fact that clubs need this to survive.
Yeah.
And
also,
not players, sorry. Well, players need it to make a living. Yeah. And it's a profession at the end of the day. I don't care. And you might have all the, as fans, we have the beauty of, loyalty exists. They would never give up on our club. We are 3 people sat in this part or in this group, and we would all agree if we were offered more money to do the same job elsewhere, we would all go. 100%.
Not at Reading or Brentford though.
I would snap someone's arm off and leave if I was being paid more.
I wouldn't leave Reading because that's my club.
But I understand why someone that's not a fan of that club would leave.
Yeah, 100%.
So you're at Barcelona come knocking, and you're at Reading. Oh no, I'm in the dream situation. I'm never leaving.
Yeah, as long as it's a reasonable amount I can live off, I wouldn't leave.
Really?
No, I honestly wouldn't.
Oh, jeez.
Especially if Barcelona come knocking, Reading have to have been doing decent. So I'd be more than happy to be at Reading. Look at Gerrard. He didn't leave to go to Chelsea or Real Madrid when he was offered.
Yeah, I think it helps that he's probably being paid 150 grand a week to soften that blow.
But he was getting offered more at Chelsea.
We'll never know. We'll never know on that contract.
If Barcelona were looking at Reading, then Reading must have been doing reasonably well, and Reading must have been able to offer me a reasonable amount.
Bayern Munich are looking at Omar Richards. Reading aren't doing
Let's face
spectacular
it,
or pulling threes up.
Only because
He
he's
is,
free
though.
and he's cheap. And he's doing well.
And he's an England under-21 international.
At the age of 22, but can.
But, okay, when he was 21, he was an under-21 international.
I wouldn't leave my club, but I would leave any other club.
I would leave any other club for money unless I was, captain of Reading or playing every week for Reading.
Barcelona's finance department comes knocking in. You're at Reading's at the time. But Barcelona's finance department come in and go, no worries, come work in Spain. Come work for us at Barca. Nah, I prefer Reading.
I honestly wouldn't, because it's
I
my
don't
club.
believe
Any
you.
other club I would.
I don't believe you at all.
You don't have to believe me.
Because it will never happen. But this is all
Good point.
All right, James, thanks.
Good point.
But hypothetically, no, I wouldn't. I wouldn't.
No, but if you look at it from a point of Premier League, the Championship club's going to be easy pickings. If you're limited to 25 a week, Championship club offer you 30, 35 to be a squad member. You're going to sit on the bench and you're going to enjoy your life. It'll ruin the Championship market. I mean, you see, don't get me wrong, Norwich are pretty much a Premier League club, but they're demanding 40 million for Buendia. If salary cap and he's earning 20. If you're Arsenal, you're saying, don't worry about it. You give him the money and he buys himself out of his contract.
Yeah, would you then see that could be a case, to be fair? How much will the player actually need to bought out their own contracts?
Well, Neymar's contract was 220 million or whatever it was, wasn't it? So for a Championship player, it's not going to be a massive amount, is it? Because he's probably earning what they earn in a year. So,
according to this source, Benaid is earning 25,000 a week, until 2024.
So that's quite a lot of money. So he's probably a not very good example, but a player that's got a year and a bit left on his contract, it's crazy.
Richards will be able to buy himself out of his contract now.
Yeah.
How's that whole Bosman thing work? I know. Would that be able to... So Richards is only allowed to move if there's a fee for him, isn't there?
He can move. He can start discussing terms with foreign clubs now.
Yep. 1st of January.
Yeah, but you can't discuss moves with other British clubs until the end, until your contract's actually out. So,
which is 30th of June, is it? Yeah.
End of June, beginning of July.
He can do what Asahi Samuel has done.
Yeah, that's why he's going.
But they have to pay a fee to buy him out of said contract if he wishes to move.
If he wants to go in January, yeah. Then they pay out the rest of his wages or contract.
See, you look at this. Allegedly, Richards and Elise are both on just over $2,000 a week each. Yeah. What's stopping Bayern just giving Reading half a million and saying, here you go, fellas?
The point is, because they can get him for free. That's why.
That might, yeah, okay, fair enough.
But, yeah, the interesting thing, I have just lost my train of thought completely.
No worries. I think we're just over the 45 mark, to be fair. I think we all agree the wage limit or cap, whatever you want to call it, is a stupid idea. We don't think it's particularly worth implementing. It's for various reasons. We've gone through them to death in this pod, to be fair.
Yeah.
So I think we'll wrap it up there, boys. But next week we will discuss the academy system because we have some very different views on it, especially someone coming at it from a Reading point of view, who are allegedly the best, one of the best academies in the country, if you believe the category system. So we'll leave it there, gents. As usual, thank you very much for listening to this week's pod. I know we've rambled on a bit, and obviously the Paris stuff in the middle of the podcast really helps when you're trying to record. So we'll see where they go next. That'll be a fascinating one to see if they do poach the lower leagues, as we've mentioned. But please do like, follow, subscribe, listen, and share it where you can. It does massively help the podcast. I think we're nearly at 1,000 listens in just shy of 15 episodes, which is really, really good work. And we couldn't have done it without any of you. Thank you so much, and we're on to the next one.